The first complaint arrived before sunrise. Margaret Hale found the note nailed to her front gate. Your hogs are destroying that orchard. There was no signature. There didn't need to be. Nearly everyone in the county believed the same thing. Nathan unfolded the note. Another one. Margaret smiled. Probably. He looked toward the pecan grove behind the farmhouse. 60 Berkshire hogs wandered quietly beneath towering pecan trees. Some rooted gently through last year's leaves. Others slept in the cool shade. Piglets chased each other between the trunks. It looked peaceful. To Margaret, it looked healthy. To everyone else, it looked like disaster. Across the valley, orchard owners spent every spring mowing grass, spraying weeds, and hauling away fallen branches. Margaret did something entirely different. She opened the gates. The hogs moved in. The county couldn't understand why. Neither could Dale Harper. One Saturday morning, he leaned against the feed store porch watching Margaret load fencing supplies. You still keeping pigs in that orchard? Margaret nodded. I am. He laughed. They'll tear every root out. She smiled. They haven't yet. Another rancher joined the conversation. I heard she's got 60 now. Dale shook his head. By next year, she'll have 60 dead pecan trees. Laughter rolled across the porch. Margaret simply climbed into her truck. Some arguments weren't worth having. Her grandfather Samuel had taught her that. When Margaret was 14, she followed Samuel through the oldest section of the pecan grove. The ground looked different from neighboring orchards. Leaves covered the soil. Earthworms moved beneath damp mulch. Birds searched among the fallen husks. She frowned. Shouldn't we rake all this? Samuel smiled. No. Silence. The orchard feeds itself. She looked confused. How? He pointed toward a group of old farm hogs wandering beneath the trees. They're doing half the work. The hogs rooted through fallen pecans. Ate insects. Turned leaves into the soil. Left natural fertilizer behind. Samuel rested one hand against an old pecan trunk. Healthy trees don't grow from clean ground. Years later, Margaret understood exactly what he meant. The Hale pecan grove covered nearly 20 acres. Many trees were more than 60 years old. Every autumn, they dropped thousands of pecans. Not all were marketable. Damaged nuts. Split shells. Insect-damaged kernels. Neighboring orchard owners paid workers to gather and destroy them. Margaret let the hogs clean everything. Nothing went to waste. The hogs consumed damaged pecans. Cleaned fallen fruit. Reduced insect populations. Turned leaves into rich, organic matter. Every winter the grove seemed healthier. The county extension office hosted an orchard management seminar every February. Margaret attended faithfully. During one presentation, the speaker discussed orchard sanitation. We recommend removing all fallen nuts immediately. Margaret raised her hand. What if livestock does it? The speaker paused. What kind of livestock? Hogs. The room erupted in quiet laughter. Dale Harper leaned back in his chair. I knew it. The speaker smiled politely. Hogs usually damage orchards. Margaret nodded. If they're unmanaged. Another chuckle drifted across the room. She didn't respond. Samuel always believed good records argued better than loud opinions. Back home, Margaret opened another worn notebook. 32 years of orchard records. Tree growth. Nut production. Rainfall. Organic matter. Soil tests. Everything. Samuel had measured nearly everything. One sentence appeared again and again. Never judge the roots by looking only at the leaves. Nathan found her reading late that evening. You've got Grandpa's books again. Margaret smiled. They're still teaching. Every spring the hogs entered one section of the orchard. Portable fencing rotated them every few weeks. No area stayed occupied too long. The pigs rooted lightly. Never deeply. They disturbed fallen leaves. Mixed manure into the soil. Ate pecan weevils before they emerged. Consumed spoiled nuts that otherwise attracted disease. By early summer, lush grasses returned behind them. The soil became soft, dark, rich. Earthworms multiplied. The county soil conservation technician visited during June. He knelt beneath one pecan tree, scooped up a handful of soil, then quietly smiled. This feels different. Margaret nodded. It is. He dug several inches deeper. Rich black organic matter filled the hole. Nearby orchards often showed dry, compacted clay. Here, the soil crumbled easily. He looked thoughtful. Interesting. Nathan smiled. You said that 3 times. The technician laughed. I know. Late summer brought unusual heat. Rainfall slowed. Grass stopped growing. Most orchards relied heavily on irrigation. Margaret's trees remained green. Nobody thought much about it. Yet, autumn harvest arrived. The Hale orchard produced another excellent pecan crop. The Hogs eagerly cleaned damaged nuts afterward. Everything looked routine. Until winter. Weather forecasts predicted one of the driest years in decades. Nobody panicked. Not immediately. Spring arrived. Rain never did. By May the first irrigation ponds had dropped noticeably. June broke temperature records. Pastures browned. Hay yields collapsed. Orchard owners pumped water continuously. Nathan checked the fuel bills. They're running irrigation almost every day. Margaret looked toward her grove. We aren't. Their orchard used very little supplemental water. The ground beneath the trees stayed surprisingly moist. Thick organic mulch covered nearly every inch. Years of leaves. Compost. Natural hog manure. Everything Samuel had protected remained in place. The county agricultural office declared severe drought conditions by July. Extension agents visited orchards throughout the valley. One afternoon they stopped at the Hale farm. The lead horticulturist slowly walked beneath the pecan trees. Healthy green leaves stretched overhead. Shade cooled the ground. The soil remained damp several inches below the surface. He frowned, then walked into a neighboring orchard across the fence. Dry grass. Bare soil. Hard-packed earth. Leaves beginning to curl. He returned 20 minutes later. I've got a question. Margaret smiled. Go ahead. He pointed toward a group of Berkshire hogs quietly rooting beneath the trees. Exactly how long have those hogs been living in this orchard? The horticulturist watched the Berkshire hogs move calmly beneath the towering pecan trees. Some rooted lightly through the leaf litter. Others cracked old pecans with astonishing ease. Several piglets chased beetles between the rows. He looked back at Margaret. Exactly how long have those hogs been living in this orchard? Margaret smiled. Almost 12 years. Nathan handed him one of Samuel Hale's weathered notebooks. The horticulturist slowly turned the pages. Soil tests. Moisture readings. Organic matter percentages. Nut yields. Rainfall records. Everything carefully dated. Finally, he looked up. You've been measuring this the entire time. Margaret nodded. My grandfather started long before I did. The horticulturist knelt beneath one of the oldest pecan trees. He pushed a soil probe nearly a foot into the ground. The probe slid effortlessly through rich, dark earth. Then he walked across the fence into a neighboring orchard. The difference was immediate. Bare ground. Hard-packed clay. The probe barely entered 6 inches. He quietly returned. I think we've been asking the wrong question. Nathan smiled. What question? Whether hogs belong in orchards. He looked around the grove. The real question is how to manage them correctly. Word spread through the county before the week ended. Farmers began driving past the Hale orchard. Not to laugh. To look. The drought intensified. Reservoirs dropped. Irrigation restrictions followed. Many orchard owners watched leaves curl despite running pumps around the clock. Margaret irrigated only occasionally. The soil beneath the thick layer of leaves and organic matter stayed cool and damp. Every fallen pecan hull, every leaf, every bit of hog manure had slowly become part of a giant sponge holding precious moisture. One morning Dale Harper drove into the farmyard. He climbed out carrying a shovel. Margaret laughed. Morning. He held up the shovel. I came to dig. She raised an eyebrow. My orchard. She smiled. I figured. Together they dug a small hole beneath one of the pecan trees. Dark earth crumbled easily. Earthworms filled nearly every shovel. Moisture remained several inches below the surface despite weeks without meaningful rain. Dale shook his head. I don't understand. Margaret smiled. You remember what Grandpa always said. He looked curious. What? Feed the soil. Silence. The soil feeds everything else. Dale nodded slowly. I think I'm finally beginning to understand. Harvest season arrived beneath cloudless skies. Most orchards reported disappointing crops. Small nuts. Premature drop. Poor kernel fill. Several growers abandoned portions of their harvest because irrigation costs exceeded potential profits. The Hale orchard looked completely different. Heavy limbs bent beneath healthy pecan clusters. The husks opened naturally. The nuts were large. Well filled. Beautiful. Nathan stood beneath one particularly productive tree. I've never seen this many. Neither had the county buyers. When the first trucks arrived, they immediately noticed the quality. One inspector cracked several random pecans. Bright golden kernels filled each shell. He smiled. These are exceptional. Another buyer walked the orchard. He stopped beneath the shade. The temperature felt noticeably cooler than neighboring groves. The ground remained soft. Leaves covered nearly every exposed inch of soil. Finally, he looked toward Margaret. "Your irrigation schedule?" She smiled. "Mostly shade." The buyers laughed. She wasn't joking. The County Pecan Cooperative called an emergency meeting after harvest. Growers wanted answers. Margaret almost declined the invitation. Nathan smiled. "They're finally ready." She nodded. "I think they are." The meeting hall overflowed. Growers filled every chair. Extension specialists lined the back wall. The horticulturist opened with a simple statement. "We've spent weeks comparing orchards." He projected photographs onto the screen. Bare orchard floors, compacted soil, wilted trees. Then came images from the Hale farm. Thick leaf litter, healthy grasses, dark soil, contented Berkshire hogs moving quietly beneath mature pecan trees. Whispers spread through the audience. One grower raised his hand. "So the hogs saved the orchard?" Margaret shook her head. "No." Silence. "They helped build the soil." Another asked, "Why didn't the trees dry out?" She pointed toward a cross-section of soil collected beneath one of her trees. This dark organic matter filled almost every inch. Roots reached deep into cool, living soil. Earthworms tunneled everywhere. The horticulturist nodded. The drought exposed differences that had been building for years. That sentence stayed with everyone. The drought didn't create healthy orchards. It revealed them. Over the following winter, several orchard owners visited the Hale farm. Not everyone wanted hogs. Margaret understood. Instead, she explained the principle rather than the practice. Healthy soil, continuous ground cover, organic matter, managed grazing, biological activity. The hogs were one tool, not the only tool. Dale Harper listened carefully. He laughed one afternoon. "You know?" Margaret looked over. "What?" "I spent 20 years trying to make my orchard look clean." She smiled. "So did most people." He looked across the leaf-covered ground. "Turns out I was cleaning away the very thing keeping the trees alive." The following spring, the County Conservation District announced a new orchard health demonstration project. The Hale farm became the first site. University students arrived. Young orchardists followed. Researchers measured soil biology, water infiltration, root growth. Every study reached the same conclusion. The orchard beneath the hog rotation held significantly more organic matter and retained moisture far longer than conventionally managed orchards nearby. One graduate student asked Margaret, "When did you realize this system worked?" She smiled. "I didn't." The student looked surprised. "You didn't." "I trusted someone who kept better records than I could." She held up Samuel's oldest notebook. The worn leather cover barely held together. Inside were neat handwritten observations stretching back decades. The final page contained only one sentence. "Healthy farms prepare for drought long before the sky forgets to rain." Margaret quietly closed the notebook. Years earlier, neighbors saw 60 hogs wandering beneath pecan trees and assumed the orchard was being destroyed. They saw muddy animals, rooting, fallen leaves, an untidy grove. Margaret saw workers. The hogs cleaned damaged pecans before insects multiplied. They reduced pest populations naturally. Their manure returned nutrients to the soil. Their gentle rooting mixed organic matter into the surface. Year after year, they quietly helped build healthier ground beneath the trees. No single season changed the orchard. Thousands of ordinary days did. By the time the drought finally broke, the Hale Pecan Grove had become more than the county's healthiest orchard. It had become proof that resilience is rarely created during a crisis. It is built quietly, season after season, long before anyone else believes it matters. As fresh rain finally tapped against the pecan leaves one cool autumn evening, Margaret stood beneath the old trees Samuel had loved. The Berkshire hogs rested peacefully nearby after another day's work. The orchard smelled of wet earth and fallen leaves. She smiled, remembering the laughter that once followed her every trip into town. Nobody laughed anymore. Instead, they asked questions. And Margaret always gave the same answer. The hogs didn't save the orchard. She looked down at the rich black soil beneath her boots. They simply helped the soil become healthy enough to save the trees itself.